You're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm Weston Williams, joined by Oliver Camacho. All right, this week we go inside the huddle with Patricia Racette. The newly appointed artistic director of Opera Theater of St. Louis returns to the OBS to share her strategy for storytelling and shaping the future of her new home company. And then a field report from the Met's Barber of Seville, described by our on-the-ground correspondent as a money machine. Plus, in the 2-minute drill, Opera Philadelphia's $11 tickets are back, and the 2025 Richard Tucker Award winner is announced. It's a great time for opera in America. No obstacles or challenges for artists at all. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow. On Apple Podcasts, hit the plus sign. Email us your hot takes by writing to mailbag@operaboxscore.com or upload a voice memo using the You Got Something to Say tab on our website, operaboxscore.com. However you contribute, you'll get an OBS beer coaster, an OBS lapel pin, and a #1 OBS fan foam finger just for sharing your own hot take. And without further ado, Oliver Camacho, how's it going?
We had a scary one today with the round of 16 match between Carlos Alcaraz and Karen Khachanov. Hopefully Carlos can recover and do better in the next round. I don't want to be scared like this. Yannick Sinner is back from his 3-month suspension for accidentally being doped. I love that story. We talked about it, I think, a couple months ago. This is his first tournament back. And he seems like he's in really good form. So I expect him to make it very, very far, possibly win this tournament. But, it's a great time to be alive. Nothing else is going on besides the Rome Open.
Well, we do have a Chicago Pope, which is always an exciting twist that I wasn't expecting in the past week or so. We've all known on this podcast, we are Chicago-based. You can listen no matter where you are, but it is unfortunately now a mortal sin to put ketchup on your hot dog. Let's talk some opera.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
Last week, we got the news that Patricia Racette, a friend of the show, was appointed as the new artistic director of Opera Theater of St. Louis. We'll dive right into this interview in which I introduce her mostly through my flattering her. I was so excited to be able to speak to her. Here's our interview with Patricia Racette. We are welcoming back Patricia Racette to Opera Box Score. May I call you Pat?
You may, but do not, under any circumstances, call me Patty.
Okay, I won't. Pat, you were actually a guest on this very podcast years ago in our early days. You were interviewed by my colleague, George Cedarquist.
Okay.
Probably at Santa Fe, or you were in some place together. Maybe you were actually Opera Theater St. Louis together. But at any rate, we're so thrilled to have you back. And as soon as we got the press release for the Opera Theater announcement, we knew we had to have you back on the show. And for those listeners who may not know that much about your singing career, to me, it is a great American career. I have had the chance to see you in Chicago as Magda in The Council, as Sister Helen Prejean in Dead Man Walking, as Elle in La Voix Humaine, yes, and as in HD as Neda in Pagliacci. And those roles are all so different. And the vocal demands couldn't be different for each of those roles. But what's consistent about those 4 performances that I saw was your commitment to the drama. Almost to the point where I feel like the singing comes second. It's like you're more concerned about the character and that the audience is getting the story. And yes, of course, you have a beautiful voice and you have this, Richard Tucker award-winning technique. But yeah, I just feel like sometimes you just like say, you know what, I'll sing you a pretty note soon. Let me tell you the story first.
Thank you. That is my goal. And I'm so pleased that you've walked away from my performances with that assessment. I look, drama first, singing second. It has always been that way. I say it to my young artists all the time. Please speak through your singing. That is what hooked me into opera. The actual singing, classical in quotes, of course, singing didn't win me over. It's when I realized how absolutely integrated it was in the theatricality of what it is. I mean, it's a theatrical art form, and that is what hooked me early on, and is what has kept me engaged and excited about the art form. It's it's the totality of all these aspects of it that is just so remarkable and amazing. So, yeah, the
Well,
drama has always been in the foreground for me. You speak through your singing. The singing, the music is your vehicle for having something to say.
here in Chicago, we get to hear a lot of Craig Terry, and we know that you collaborate with him on what in essence is a cabaret act. And I've heard some of your singing in this, and it goes to an extreme where it's like, is this a classically trained singer?
Well, that's coming home for me, Oliver. That is coming home for. That's where I started. I had no intention whatsoever of going into opera. Says she 35 plus years later. Oops. No, I had no intention of doing that. And it's again, it's the speaking through the music and through the voice that has always captivated. It has always been a device for expression, a mode of expression. And yes, Craig Terry and I have been collaborating for quite a long time. We had our first show, Diva on Detour, which we did, gosh, probably more than 50 times here and in Europe. And then I'm sorry, I guess you missed my Patricia Sings Piaf at the Harris Theater that I did. I think it was.
I remember that. Yes, I did miss that, but I do remember that. So.
Yes, and I've done that several other times, and I'm doing it a couple more times this year. So, again, I say returning to that genre is returning home. And incidentally, Oliver, I just conducted this seminar course that was 2 weeks long at San Francisco Conservatory of Music, and the title of it was cross genre and how it informs classical singing, because it's literally the path that my artistic life has taken. It started there, and it sort of was folded into the classical genre, and it's very instructive because when you're in the shower singing your shower song, you're not thinking about lining up your vowels, you're not thinking about making sure your F sharp is so. You're singing from expression and a naturalness and an immediacy, and I believe the two are not at all separate. So you say, yeah, wow, is this really an opera singer? Yes, absolutely. It is.
I sort of want to put a pin in the idea of you like teaching, because I want to talk about your work is it the Gerdine or Gerdine? I don't know how to say their last name. Gerdine, the Gerdine Young Artist Program. I want to talk about your approach to fostering and mentoring the next generation. But I want to just get back a little bit to your actual early career, and we just had another Richard Tucker Award announcement.
I know.
So you obviously had to have built your technique to the point where, high standard of that award would recognize your singing. But can you describe what it was like in that part of your career, maybe looking around at your colleagues and thinking about yourself, like, I want to do more. I want to act more. I want to be less, not less beautiful, but I've achieved this, but this is not it. Like, there's so much more to this. And seeing that's how you're going to distinguish yourself as an artist.
Right. Interesting question. Honestly, when I was in college and I was really wanting to focus on jazz, but they didn't have an actual degree, so I was forced to take classical voice lessons. And my teacher sat me down after the first, semester, and she said, I hate to tell you, this is going to be your bread and butter. The reason I'm sharing this story, by the way, I went home to my dorm and cried for 3 days. But the reason I'm sharing this story is because I had a natural technique. It just naturally came out of me. There was not a lot of scaffolding needed to build the technique. So that was a major asset. And so again, what I say, I've told this story in many an interview. She was my teacher at the time, was, assigning me repertoire, and I'd be like, ugh, oh, had I Jubal's Lyre, please. And, just did not hook me. And she finally realized my sophomore year, she gave me Senza Mamma from Suor Angelica. And this is going to date me. I got the cassette tape from the library and the score, and I listened to the whole opera. It was Renato Scotto. And it was like a lightning bolt just struck me. I thought, oh my goodness, this is the power of this art. This is the power of what this can do and what this can say and how it can move people, how it is cathartic. And I was like, boom, like a light switch, hooked. And so I've always been and began that journey of constantly being on the search for individualizing what I had to say through that. I say this to my young artists all the time. Your job really as an artist is to constantly to take a regular, unrelenting emotional inventory of yourself, because that is what you pour into what you're saying. That is what makes any given moment in your performance individualized, puts your fibers in it, puts your thumbprint on it. And that, whether we recognize it or not, that is what transports us. That's what lifts us up.
Well, you've been directing the Jardine Young Artist Program at Opera Theater St. Louis for, I don't know how many years now. That's 6. And we recently interviewed Meridian Prawl, and who coincidentally received one of the Richard Tucker study grant. Yeah. But she told us about her experience in the program, and her experience happened to coincide with the pandemic. But she said she learned so much because of your insistence that things go on, and that you were going to connect her to people and have her sing for people, and do however you did it through Zoom. I don't know how that worked out.
Yeah, those were unique times. I have to say this about Meridian. I've rarely confronted a young artist that when inherent in this art form, I'm gonna offer constructive criticism, do this, don't do that, et cetera, et cetera. I've rarely confronted a young artist that takes that information, digests that information, owns that information, and never goes backwards. She literally, the amount she grew from year 1 to year 2 and then year 3, and the amount she continues to grow is just astonishing. And I'm so pleased and so celebrate all the success she's having. It is well deserved.
Yeah, I'm crazy about her voice. So in Chicago, we have the Ryan Opera Center at Lyric Opera of Chicago. And during the pandemic, I noticed a shift towards like you're teaching in this class, this like multi-genre discipline, which I think is now becoming standard in these young artist programs. Like these singers have to be able to do, American Songbook, musical theater,
I'm so glad you said this. It is a reality. The idea that an opera singer will need to be able to sing in a different genre is very much a reality, and I think for a number of reasons, industry wide. And I think it's wonderful, and I intend to implement some of these kinds of titles in my tenure here as artistic director of the company. So I think it's important. I think it's exciting, and I think it only just broadens the opportunity to have something to say for any given artist.
I understand. So I'm very conservative, not that way, but like in terms of my musical taste, like I'm very into like, oh, this is how you sing Mozart. Like this is how you sing Baroque music. This is the type of voice I want to hear singing Puccini. And yeah, I might be just old fashioned that way. And sometimes I go to these programs that feature young artists. I won't say which programs, and they're going to do like an American Songbook night. And I'm sort of rolling my eyes because I know that this, Mexican soprano or this, Russian mezzo that they brought in, they won't be able to do it. And then here's where the Americans get to shine because they're singing in their their native lange and they understand the style.
They're singing in their first language, and they're singing likely about stories about them, about the lived stories about their country. Let's face it. To be fair, Oliver, we've been singing opera, which has been based almost entirely a European art form, and telling their stories a lot. So I think it's good to have. I think it's good for the listener and for the performer. I think it's an instructive way forward.
So last year, before you knew this was happening in your career, you directed Susanna, Carlisle Floyd's Susanna, and we wanted to go see it so badly. Janai is a good friend of the show.
Oh, I love her.
We saw all the reviews and then these awards that this production was getting. And in a way, Susanna is like a full circle for you, isn't it? Like, wasn't that the role that you first sang as a kid?
Yes, it's the first full role I sang. And it was totally full circle. I sang the arias in competitions and was very successful with that. So it was very meaningful. So yes, hey, come to Omaha in beginning of 26. I'm remounting my production there.
Will it be with Janai?
It won't be with Janai. No.
I'll come anyway, but we really, really...
I love Janai. She's a wonderful artist. I loved working with her. She was terrific.
So you have stage direction experience and you've been leading this young artist program. How do you feel like all of the stuff we've been talking about, your ideas about developing the next generation, your own singing career, doing like multidiscipline work, how does that all funnel into your new role at Opera Theater?
As artistic director, it's widening my lens. I'm wrapping my arms around the company as a whole, which is exciting. When you think of it, of course I come to this primarily as firstly, I should say, as a singer, but think about what a singer really needs to know. I know good singing pedagogically. I know great direction experientially. I know great design. I know great conducting. So that sort of collection of experiences help inform so much. I have so many years of that experience. So it all sort of unfolds and is very useful in these other chapters. I think it's fair to say this is my chapter 4 about at this point in my life. I mean, when I did my directorial debut, for example, which was also here at Opera Theater of St. Louis, so clearly it was meant to be. I felt like a duck in water. I love not having to be so mono-minded, which you have to be as a leading lady in approaching your performance. I love being in charge of the visual narrative as a whole of the piece. So backing up even further or widening that lens even further, as artistic director, I can continue my work fostering the next generation, which I most certainly will be doing, but also just having a hand in the vision of what I think the art form should be, this company, and how we put together the participants, the singers, the creative teams, the conductors, everything. So I really think the path has led to this with great meaning, and I'm very excited about these next steps. And for me, if I may say, for the company, for the art form, I'm excited.
Opera Theater has already been a leader in developing American operas. I don't know how much of James Robinson's planning is set in place, and how much of it is Andrew. But where will we begin to see?
Next year, baby.
Already? Okay.
Next year. Yes, indeed. Jim left as of the beginning of September last year in 2024. So Andrew did ask artistic leadership to sort of pool together and keep our planning on track, which I was very much had a very heavy hand in. And so I will just be continuing that work, and we've already, identified the titles and started with our cast and creatives. So you will see, you won't have to wait 3 seasons.
Okay, wonderful. Is there something that you have to give up, though, in order to take on this role at Opera Theater?
Is there something I have to give up? Well, maybe free time. Okay, my wife and I, we discussed the possibility of my retiring in 2016. How am I doing? So at that time in 2019, Andrew Jorgensen offered me the position of running the Young Artist Program. And then obviously, things kept unfolding. I really got bit by the bug for directing. And so that's been coming my way more and more. So I think it'll be, like I said, less free time, but this is a labor of love. I feel passionately about all these endeavors. I plan on having more of a presence here in St. Louis. In fact, we are in process of getting an address here. We're going to still, our main home is in Santa Fe, but it'll just be more travel. So, by the way, my wife is a therapist, so she understands very well how to balance family life and, the profession. And, as a former singer, mezzo-soprano herself, she really understands it at a very deep and intricate level. So it'll just be, and, I believe a relationship is a series of agreements. We'll just sort of have to revamp those agreements and what life looks like. But to answer your question, what would I have to give up? Honestly, especially with my style of leadership, I'm going to have to give up a little control. I think the 2 words that'll be very much in the forefront of my behavior, it's going to be delegate and collaborate. I believe in leveraging the strengths of the team around me and guiding that team. So I think that would be the biggest change for me, truly bona fide control freak.
Since you brought it up, and if it's not too personal, can you talk about the importance of the work-family balance? And since your wife is, you said she's a therapist as well? Okay.
She's a therapist that works with she's a performance therapist. She works with so many singers. She works with the Met Young Artists, Ryan Center, AVA. I mean, she's on retainer with a manager to work with their artists. I mean, it's really valuable, important work.
No, it's probably an interview I can do with her to talk more about it, but maybe
that would be great because she's constant. She's sought after, and she tries to accommodate that. I'm happy to put you in touch with her.
I'd love to talk to her, but just in your own experience, can you talk about what it's been like to have a supportive spouse who maybe knows your limitations and urges you to retire in 2016?
You know what? I've known this from the beginning. In my past relationships, I've been very much aware that maintaining a balance is essential, not just for sanity, mental health, as you say, but also as an artist. We imitate life up there. You have to live life, and your identity cannot be entirely wrapped up in yourself as a singer, as a director, as whatever. You have to have a balance in order to really be authentic and impactful. The most important thing in my life is my wife, Beth Clayton. And yes, she does most definitely know my strengths and my limitations. And having a person with whom to partner and walk through this extraordinary existence. And when I say existence, I mean that living in this art form is essential, and it's essential, and it is fortifying, and nourishing. And we approach our life together as a team and always have. She's always been my eyes and ears out there. I bounce ideas off of her. It's the beauty of having someone know you almost better than you know yourself. Um, and so that's something that I value at the very, very highest level.
Well, that seems like a very natural place to end, but I have to ask you, since we talked about it a little bit, the idea of life experience going into what we do as opera singers. I don't know, I try to imagine, there are these prodigies. We don't see many prodigy singers, but we see like these prodigy violinists, these prodigy pianists who like are whatever, making concerto debuts at age 13. And
that's because if you allow me to interject here, that's because we house our instruments in our bodies, and our bodies are not fully formed, and the voice being part of that body until a certain age. So we sort of are not necessarily able to be prodigies because the instrument is not yet.
Exactly. But no, we often, like when we do come across that type of talent, we end up crediting the composer for writing music so well that a 13-year-old who clearly has not had that experience can interpret it, and we can get the emotion, we can get the meaning from it, because clearly we don't want 13-year-olds to have like Rachmaninoff level trauma,
What was it? What was the young woman's name? Charlotte Church? Do you remember that? I think that on America's Got Talent or
something like that.
One of those shows.
Yeah.
But I think that was sort of, if I may say, offer my opinion, it's sort of an artificial vocal production of what was happening there, sort of imitating what a mature voice sounds like instead of actually it being that mature voice.
Right. Well, I bring this all up because I want to come back to your own singing. Can you just let us into a little bit of how you studied characters, how you, thought about those different levels of embodying your performances? Because clearly you could not have had, all these horrific experiences that operatic heroines have to go through. Like that does require a sort of, I don't know, curiosity about other sources, I would imagine, or maybe, studying film or studying, straight theater or, I don't know.
I love this question. Because I've never had an acting class, and I didn't study film. I've always been very, very aware and took note of what reached me, what grabbed me, and what didn't, when something really just seemed authentic. But for me, and I say this to my young artists, it's not enough for you to know what the words mean. You have to know what they mean to you. And I learned that early on. I learned because, full disclosure, singing operatically I wasn't necessarily comfortable doing that. That wasn't enough. So I needed a reason to make those sounds. I needed a reason. And so I would study it. And you cannot get to that level of artistry without the material being like a second skin. You have to know it so well that it has a chance to filter through your mind, your body, your soul. And so that you are able to siphon it through your fibers. I've always sought to put myself into that situation and react to it in a real and authentic way. You're right. No, I haven't been in those situations necessarily. That opera, they tend to be extreme, especially in my voice type. But I put myself in the situation of that story, of that human being, what that person's like, how they respond to things. And we've got this rich material from which to draw. The music, the score, the story, the language, the flavor of the language help describe any given interpretive moment. And so I just started very, very early on just devouring that information, literally devouring and digesting that, so that what it resulted in was something that I hoped was uniquely had been filtered through uniquely through my lens as a human being, as a woman, as an artist commenting on what it is to be alive. So that's something because it gave me relief from just the act of singing, if that makes sense. It gave it purpose. It gave it meaning.
Well, I can't wait to see how this hunger for the art, this passion for it, translates into this new role as artistic director. Patricia Racette, thank you so much for coming back on Opera Box Score.
So much pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much, Oliver.
Back here in the Opera Box Score studio with Weston Williams, I love artists like Patricia Racette who value, the drama, who value the expression over the beauty. And I can't wait to see how that strategy really will inform what will happen in future seasons of opera theater. I thought we would take just a minute to divide up Patricia Racette's career and talk about some of her, her best roles. I mean, she is known as a, ne plus ultra interpreter of Yenufa and other Janacek roles. And I think that was my New Year's resolution to listen to Janacek operas. I've still got 7 months in that one. But she's also indisputably one of the great Puccini singers of her generation. I'd like to take a second to listen to the finale of a 2009 Suor Angelica. This is right after the aria Senza Mama, which I don't know how any soprano sings that aria. When I just look at the text, I'm devastated. But it gets even more dramatic. And I think Matt and I tend to always go to this part of the opera to see how well it is done. It's definitely huge dramatic demand on the soprano. And if you are at all locked in to what you're actually singing about, I don't know how you actually phonate when you're at this part of the opera. We're going to listen to a slightly lengthy clip. I hope we won't get caught out by the Millennium Digital Rights Act, whatever that thing is called. This is near the very end of the opera, after Senza Mama. This is from a 2009 performance. So there's a video attached to that, and you can watch it. It's pretty easy to find. Just type in Patricia Racette, Senza Mama, and this very long clip comes up, which includes the rest of the opera. that follows the aria. This is from San Francisco Opera, conducted by Patrick Summers. And what you don't hear, or maybe you do hear it, is how much physicality Patricia Racette is giving to the audience, how dynamic her performance is. But she's still nailing all of those notes. She's still right in the center of her tone. And when she reaches for those big dramatic, exclamations, they are on the breath, and they have height in the vowel, and they are approached technically, but it's still so dramatic. Like sometimes you get this performance of this part of the opera, and you're just left with shouting. And I understand if you are singing this opera and you end up just shouting because that's the only thing your voice can do. But to me, this is just a complete mastery of the instrument while still being dramatic. And she doesn't sacrifice beauty of tone, but it's not a beautiful tone. It's like, it's a dramatic tone. So yeah, it blows me away that anybody can give that much of themselves when performing such a taxing role.
That's a great way to describe her, like as an artist. Like, you always feel very dramatically engaged with what she's doing. She's one of those singers that you forget is singing, you know what I mean? But at the same time, she generally has a very impressive voice. I think there are singing actors out there, even in the operatic world, where the voice suffers a little bit, but you don't mind because you're watching a great performance. But she's not one of those. And so I was searching around for a clip or two. And of course, I'm the new music man on the podcast. And I will say, she doesn't tend to do the kind of new music that I'm usually more known for. She doesn't do the weird European deconstructed stuff because she has that beating American heart. You know what I mean? She's an American singer in like every sense of the word, in terms of like her tone quality, but also in terms of like the kinds of roles she sings and, premieres even. She premiered, I believe, Cold Sassy Tree and Carlisle Floyd. I was going to pull a clip from that, but I think we have one in our Hall of Fame for Carlisle Floyd from a year or two ago. So you can just search back and see if we actually do, and if I'm making that up. But I did a little bit more digging because I wanted to like find something that I was a little bit less familiar with. And I found that on YouTube, there is a complete performance of Emmeline at Santa Fe. The whole thing's on YouTube. It's the PBS Great Performances broadcast from 1997 of a performance from 1996, which is the premiere of it. This is Tobias Picker's first opera. And similarly, in the Carlisle Floydy vein, there's it's sort of a Americanized update of a classic story. In Susanna's case, it's a biblical story from Carlisle Floyd, but in Tobias Picker's case, for Emmeline, it's actually a retelling of Oedipus Rex, the Greek tragedy, from the view of Oedipus's mother, who is called Emmeline in this rendition. And Oedipus, by the way, is called Matthew in this one. It's transposed to late 19th century, early 20th century Massachusetts instead of ancient Greece. And it's a great piece. I mean, again, it's one that I know of by reputation, but I had not listened through the whole thing before. But it's definitely something I'm going to sit down and watch now that I know it's free on YouTube. And you should too, because man, she is giving it her all. Just like you said, Oliver, she's got the range musically, but it is so connected, and it is so powerful and moving. It's this sort of fascinatingly sympathetic take on this sort of Greek tragic character, which is often presented in this very abstract style. Again, if a European house was trying to do a similar take on Oedipus, it would be weird. There'd be, abstractions and nudity and like signs and, people hanging upside down. But no, this is a good old American retelling of that story. And it's a fantastic performance. And anywhere where you look in this, you don't have to scrub through for very long to find Patricia Racette doing something great. Here's something from, I believe, the first act. And just hear like, oh man, how she hits all those notes, but you feel her energy, and obviously I'm biased because I'm able to see it. But man, you can tell she is in every word, every note.
Let my dreams be true. Let the day come soon at last. A place, a
From a 1996 performance of Emmeline at Santa Fe Opera. We'll put links to both of those excerpts we played for you, the Suor Angelica and Emmeline. Just check it out at the webpage for this episode at operaboxscore.com.
Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on Spotify. Click follow on Apple Podcasts. Hit the plus sign. Find a friend. Blackmail them to listening to our show. Let's go into the listener mailbag.
Yeah, you got something to say? Then yeah, all right, you can say something. This is Listener Mailbag.
Hello, Opera Box Score. It's PJ. It's intermission at Il Barbiere di Seville. It's a Friday night. It's a young crowd. It's sold out. A packed house. Lots of cheering. This is like a money machine. I don't know why they don't do this Barber of Seville every year here at the Met. There's a ton of performances. It's a terrific amount of enthusiasm. The cast is Isabel Leonard, who I'm just in love with and have been from the very beginning, and David Luciano as our Figaro, and he is bringing down the house. They've extended the stage, which is the first time I've seen that in a very long time here at the Met, so the singers are coming way out into the audience. Unusual for the Metropolitan Opera. Very fast pace. What a fun opera. I just want to say my two sisters and I used to play Nintendo while listening to side 1, side 2, side 3 of the vinyl, and we were listening to, I think it was the 1958 Maria Callas edition of Barber of Seville. That was our backdrop as very young children back in Michigan, and now it's so fun to see the production here, hear the voices. I know every note of this entire opera, so that's a joy. I will say the set is a little sparse. I wish it were a little bit more lavish. It's minimalistic. We've got doors moving around, and it's fine. I wish it were a little bit more traditional, at least for this type of opera. But just having a ball. It's PJ at the Metropolitan Opera. I'll report back again soon.
So playing Nintendo while listening to Maria Callas as a kid.
As it was intended.
That explains a lot about PJ that we sort of already knew. But thanks so much for that field report, PJ. And I'm actually going to try to make it out there for the second cast, which includes friend of the show, Jack Swanson, making his Met debut as Count Almaviva. Fingers crossed that I'll be able to go.
I'll lend you my Game Boy Advance, Oliver. It's the 2-minute drill.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Operaland this week.
Our friends of the show at Opera Wire are maintaining a list of every opera company that has lost NEA grants under new Trump rule changes. As the news rolls in, the publishers will keep its readership updated on all the companies to lose money, which still represent less than half of 1% of the overall national budget. Among them are friends of the show Houston Grand Opera, Opera Philadelphia, Santa Fe Opera, Detroit Opera, the Lakes Area Music Festival, and our hometown teams, Lyric Opera of Chicago, Chicago Opera Theater, Thompson Street Opera, and the Harris Theater for Music and Dance.
And speaking of the Harris Theater for Music and Dance here in Chicago, CEO and President Lori Diamond took to LinkedIn to air her grievance that the NEA defunded the grant to support the recent production of Treemonisha, reviewed on this very podcast. In response to the language of the NEA's new funding priorities, Diamond asks, what are musicians, singers, composers, designers, and technicians if not skilled tradespeople? What could be more vital to the nation's future than the preservation, amplification, and evolution of our shared cultural history?
Meanwhile, the Kennedy Center is set to receive $257 million in the GOP's new funding proposal, roughly 6 times the amount it usually receives from the government. President Trump cares deeply about American arts and culture, which is why he is revitalizing historic institutions like the Kennedy Center to their former greatness, said Anna Kelly, a White House spokeswoman. The Kennedy Center has declined to comment.
The American Guild of Musical Artists has announced that union members have helped deliver a major win for the Metropolitan Opera, helping to secure a one-time $5 million operating grant from the state of New York. Quote, "This victory in Albany proves that when artists organize and act together, we make real change happen," reads the AGMA statement. "When we stand together, artists strengthen the performing arts industry. This is the way forward in bargaining at the Met and around the country. Collaboration, advocacy, and solidarity. Together, we will."
If you're listening to this podcast on the day it drops, be sure to secure your $11 tickets to Opera Philadelphia's 25-26 season. Friend of the show, Anthony Roth Costanzo, has taken to social media to make sure you know the Pick Your Price initiative has returned, featuring tickets for as low as $11. The Pick Your Price program will go on sale to the public Thursday, May 15th at 10 a.m. In the first year of the program, tickets for Opera Philadelphia's entire season sold out in less than 1 month.
Death of Classical and friend of the show, Creatine Price, have announced the Maria Callas Lookalike Contest. Quote, "Calling all divas, queens, maestras, and prima donnas, the Maria Callas Lookalike Contest is coming to the Greenwood Cemetery on Friday, May 23rd. The event features live jazz, cocktails, and food from local vendors, performances of Callas's most beloved arias sung by artists from the Metropolitan Opera's Lindemann program and Lafont competition, and you in your best Yves Saint Laurent. Sign up at the link at our website."
Over 600 classical musicians and industry professionals have published, an open letter entitled Musicians for Democracy, criticizing the Trump administration's oppression of free speech. Many of our audience members are active in the arts, the sciences, education, and government, reads the letter. Every single one of us knows multiple people across different sectors of American society who have lost jobs or faced life-altering insecurity due to censorship. We have watched as people have been seized and targeted for deportation for participating in peaceful protest or for no clear reason at all. We see these actions as a coordinated effort to dismantle our free society.
Mexican-American tenor Arturo Chacon Cruz will be performing a rendition of God Bless America during the opening ceremony preceding the Indy 500. Chacon Cruz became an American citizen in 2010 and GQ Latin America's Man of the Year in 2018. The tenor said the performance will mark a moment that reflects my artistic path and the country I now call home.
Que rico. In major awards news, Nicholas Brownlee has been named the winner of the 2025 Richard Tucker Award. The award comes with a $50,000 cash prize as well as the ongoing support from the Tucker family and foundation. Brownlee is a previous recipient of the 2017 Richard Tucker Career Grant and the 2016 Study Grant. Friend of the show, mezzo-soprano Meridian Prawl, mezzo-soprano Nicola Prince, and baritone Ricardo Jose Rivera have been selected as recipients of the 2025 Career Grant with an unrestricted award of $10,000 each.
Other major awards go to Opera San Jose's CEO and General Director Shauna Lucy, who was named a 2025 Woman of Influence by the Silicon Valley Business Journal. Meanwhile, Portuguese mezzo-soprano Ana Rita Coelho won the Grand Prix at the Cascais Opera Competition, along with the Audience Prize and €10,000. In that same competition, the Teresa Berganza Prize for female singers went to fellow mezzo Anna Tetuashvili, while baritone Victor Aksentievich was the recipient of the Mauricio Bensaure Prize for Best Male Voice.
In trade news, Myung-Won Chung is set to become the music director of La Scala starting in 2027, taking over from Ricardo Chailly. Meanwhile, Dominique Meyer, who recently served at La Scala himself, has been named president of Teatro Sociale di Como. And in the U.S., Florida Grand Opera has appointed Pablo Mielgo to be its new music director.
Exit stage right, Italian baritone Alberto Mastromarino has died at the age of 61. He specialized in Verdi and Puccini roles throughout the course of his career and taught at the Pavia Conservatory in Italy. English conductor, composer, and Wagnerian bass Matthew Best has died at 68. In addition to constant vocal performance engagements throughout Great Britain, Best also founded the Corydon Singers as well as the Corydon Orchestra. He was also professor of vocal studies at Royal Northern College of Music from 2015 to 2024.
And on this day, May 13th, first performances include Francesco Feo's Morano e Rosina in Naples in 1723. Also in Naples in 1726, it was the first performance of Johann Adolf Hasse's Il Sesostrate. Moving over to Salzburg in 1767, it was the first performance of Mozart's Apollo and Hyacinth, composed when he was 11 years old. Jumping to 1827 is the first performance of Donizetti's Otto Mesi in Due Ori, back to Naples. And in 1867, Arthur Sullivan's Cox and Box premiered in London. The following year, Clémence de Grandval's opera La Pénitente premiered in Paris. In 1922, Karl Szymanowski's Haggith premiered in Warsaw. In 1941, it was the first performance of Ernst Krenek's chamber opera Tarkin at Vassar College. And in 1963, it was the first performance of William Grant Still's Highway 1 USA in Miami. Birthdays include Arthur Sullivan, the aforementioned, born this day in 1842 in London. In 1864, French-based Marius Chambon was born. He created the role of the Old Hebrew in Samson and Delilah and Hector's Ghost in Les Troyens. In 1874, English-based baritone Robert Radford was born. In 1906, American soprano Maxine Stellman was born in West Brattleboro, Vermont. In 1935 was the birth of the late American baritone Dominic Cosa. And happy birthday to friend of the show, opera webmaster and field reporter P.J. Ewing, born this day in 1965.
And that's your 2-minute drill.
Just a tiny bit of the Oper Frankfurt production of Verdi's Macbeth, featuring Richard Tucker award winner Nicholas Brownlee, who I've had the pleasure of hearing sing for a couple of seasons at Santa Fe Opera. During my first year there, he was filling in as Figaro. I forget who was originally cast as Figaro in Marriage of Figaro, but that person backed out of the production, and Nicholas filled in, and he was already cast as Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream. And I was like, fine voice, lots of sound, great. The next time I saw him, it was as the Flying Dutchman.
What a jump.
Yeah,
Amazing.
So something happened. So he ate some special high-protein cereal or something like that between Figaro and Dutchman. But yeah, he sounds like $1 million. And yeah, congratulations to him.
So, obviously, I think the big story is money being taken away, but I want to start with the absolutely absurd amount of money the Kennedy Center will be receiving.
So
$257 million in the current funding proposal, 6 times the amount it usually receives from the government, which is crazy, frankly. And ordinarily, I'd be like so excited that the government is choosing to fund an organization that is dedicated to the arts, but obviously there are some extenuating circumstances this time. It seems that there is a remarkably authoritarian, benefit to, an organization, absolutely being taken over. It's like I said, I say this occasionally when we're talking about Russia, how sometimes I get a little bit jealous of the amount of funding and cultural, importance opera has to, say like, the Vladimir Putin crowd. And like, we're seeing it play out. It's so fascinating to me that, the arts are recognized as important only when they are being completely used as a puppet for,
Yeah, propaganda, for sure. It's pretty clear that Grinnell didn't really understand like the funding model of a not-for-profit. So, and it feels vaguely related to this news we got this week about the Afrikaans refugees coming to the U.S.
Yeah.
And while all other refugees are denied and basically deported.
Yep.
If you're white and you come from South Africa, sure, come on in. We'll get you set up. Here's an American passport. Welcome. At the very bottom of this article from the New York Times about this Kennedy Center award, the president is expected to attend a fundraising performance of Les Miserables. He's a fan of Broadway musicals from the 80s, including Les Mis and Cats, and fan of the opera. Of course he is. And there's an invitation offered for a gold sponsorship level of $2 million and a silver sponsorship of $100,000. both of these levels of donation come with photo opportunities with Mr. Trump. So get your picture for $2 million.
I really want to make a Ford's Theater joke, but I probably can't. I think the other kind of good news in this great funding story is the Met getting $5 million from the state of New York. I think that this is, something that I've seen a lot of people talking in the nonprofit space, not necessarily just arts organizations, but in the nonprofit space about, really relying on state governments now to really try to, get funding to make ends meet. I'm very excited that they managed to get something, $5 million. I mean, it's no $257 million for the Kennedy Center, but $5 million is nothing to sneeze at. And I do think that, if an opera company is in a more sympathetic state, there might be some more opportunities there to weather this storm. But of course, you can't always count on that. And, even under the best of circumstances, budgets are limited and tight, and, money might need to go to other things that get defunded outside the arts as well.
Well, this is still state funding. It's not federal funding.
Right.
But I wonder if there's something here about the Met ultimately being a conservative institution, presenting a very conservative form of art, that, is able to receive money because maybe the administration has not looked under the hood. No. And they just assume that it's like La Boheme and, Carmen all the time.
Well, this is a common thing I think I see a lot in terms of public perception, right? Your average opera artist is, LGBTQ, pretty radical, outspokenly, anti-authoritarian at the very least. And yet we do have this certain cover of being associated with wealth and luxury and sort of frivolous entertainment sometimes. I would love to see, Donald Trump accidentally find himself in a performance of the Licht cycle and maybe drives him insane and actually does some good for the world. But, we can't really count on that. But that is a good point. I think that could be something that we'll see being leveraged. And I think we might also see maybe some more conservative seasons if this defunding continues and de-emphasis of, LGBTQ visibility programs and, progressive stances on things, especially with companies the size of the Met. I mean, small, scrappy, storefront operas are going to, kind of be, doing their own thing. But the big companies might be tempted to turn in that direction.
But the Harris Theater is, I wouldn't call it here in Chicago a scrappy company.
Yeah.
They present major international acts. And this Treemonisha defunding after they had won the grant to have the grant taken away. If
you look at the LinkedIn post, we didn't read the portion of it that I'm about to refer to, but at the very beginning, Diamond noted that the announcement came through that it was defunded minutes into the opening curtain of the performance that you and I saw, Oliver. And that kind of put some chills down the back of my spine, especially given, the extremely positive reaction the crowd had. A pretty diverse crowd, too, I might add, for, by the standards at least of, the Harris Theater. And, to be like, the show has already started, and to just see it just taken away, like, what do you even do? It gives a whole new emphasis to the show must go on, right? I don't know. Obviously, Diamond didn't go into the details of what the shortfall might be, whether or not there's any question of who's getting paid, who's paying who, what this might mean for the tour going forward. But these are all massive questions that arts administrators are going to have to be wrestling with, for unfortunately the foreseeable future, because this list on Opera Wire is already quite long.
Well, artists are also trying to be active in this, or to resist in this open letter. about free speech. I mean, I understand that there's power in signing your name to something like this and like seeing that you're not alone. As somebody who is part of a marginalized group and also has other risks to be wary of, I'm not going to put my name on something right now.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone from the Trump administration listens to the podcast, so we have some insulation there. But I do understand, like, you know, my first reaction looking at the letter was like, wow, this is, you know, not a lot of signatures, not a lot of professionals, although there's some big names in there. You know, Joyce DiDonato is very prominent. But, you know, we are reaching that time when it seems like it's a little bit more dangerous to be more open about these things, especially if you're already in a marginalized group. And, you know, I think that it might be time for people to start thinking about what can we do beyond open letters? You know, what can we do other than, you know, record ICE agents? You know, we have to start, you know, standing up, I think, a little bit more authoritatively against authoritarianism. Wow, this became a political podcast, Oliver. When did that happen?
Yeah. Well, go dress up like Maria Callas and try to win some money at that cemetery coming up. That's coming up in May. If you don't want to dress up like Maria Callas, at least go watch it. We told Creatine Price that we would amplify the message about the May 23rd lookalike contest at the Greenwood Cemetery. I assume that's in New York.
I think so, and hopefully it's not the graveyard of democracy. Let's wrap this show up.
Good call, bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. It's how we end the show around here. Oliver Camacho is who I will start with.
I have already bought my plane ticket for the Boston Early Music Festival. I'm so excited. It's coming up the second week of June. And now I'm in the process of looking for a place to stay. And I am shocked at how expensive hotels are in Boston right now.
True.
I honestly can't believe it. It's never been this bad. So if you have a spare room, my bad call is hotel prices. My good call is whichever of our listeners wants to put me and a guest up. It'd be great if I had my own bathroom. June 9th through the 15th.
I have a good call, and that is one way in which the Metropolitan Opera is standing up against some sort of authoritarianism, and that's in the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra Resilience Tour, which is starting up, I believe, in August. It'll feature Rachel Willis Sorensen, who will be joining the orchestra for performances of the Prelude and Liebestod from Tristan and the Four Last Songs of Richard Strauss. And of course, because it's mostly an orchestral concert, we will have a Beethoven's Fifth Symphony centerpiece throughout the European tour. If you're one of our European listeners, definitely check that out. Something to support. Well, we're doing our best over here in America. That is it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Make sure you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, get your voice heard, and find links to stuff we've talked about at our website, operaboxscore.com. That's also where you can put your money where our mouths are. Give back to the OBS using the Support the Team tab. Your announcer is Norm Woodell. Your creative consultant is Oliver Camacho, and your audio editor is Weston Williams. The executive producer of the OBS is George Cedarquist. For our guest, Patricia Racette, I'm Weston Williams, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you receive 6 times what you would normally get from the feds. We're back with an all-new show next week when Huang Ruo and David Henry Huang go inside the huddle to share their new recording of An American Soldier. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more divas, queens, maestras, and prima donnas. Join us.